Hello friends, welcome back to Aunt Debbie's Boutique. I'm excited to share with you a week-long series on potholders and ministry. There's no better gift to anyone with a kitchen than a potholder, and they're such fun to make. I also want to share with you a ministry my mom started and hopes you will start one too. It's called her Potholder Ministry. My mom, Mellie Maxon, a lifelong seamstress and an avid quilter, will be 90 next summer. At this stage of her life, she still loves to sew, but prefers quicker projects than quilts. Potholders filled that bill for her, and another ministry of her many was born. She makes matching pairs of potholders and gives them away to visitors at church and other outlets that she has chosen. She wrote this poem that I'd like to read to you that she attaches to all the potholders. God made you like a potholder, beautiful in every way. In a kitchen you are exquisite, hanging on display. God is happier if you are useful, helping others along the way. He sees you as much as more beautiful when your edges begin to fray. And that just kind of expresses her belief and my belief too in the need to be of service to other people because that's what God has called us to do. She has also conducted a workshop at a women's ministry gathering and gave each person a set of potholders with instructions to keep one and to give one away, then to pray for the recipient every time they use the potholder. She has recruited a small group of women at church, and of course I'm part of that group. They'll help her sew and distribute. Moving forward, we hope to give to ministries that serve families and help families get started in new jobs and new homes and that sort of stuff. She gives a lot to those kind of ministries. Each day for a week, I will post a short video on making a simple potholder. Each design will be different. I will give you tips on making them look more polished and professional, as well as some shortcuts so you could make them a little faster. I will also demonstrate different ways to bind the edges. Feel free to adopt all or parts of this into your gift giving or to start your own ministry. Let's get started with today's project. As you can see on my pile here, we're going to be using a series of, it's a jelly roll and some fat quarters that I have that are all in blues and gold tones and navy and a little gray and a little cream color. Anyway, they're all coordinated set. The jelly roll is by Riley Blake. I believe it's called Gingham Sundry or something like that. Gingham Foundry. And the fat quarters were called Blues or something like that by Moda. So I just threw them together plus a few other fabrics I had, and I'm going to try to use these on every video this week so we have a beautiful color combination that all go together in the end. This is what we're going to be using for today. We need about I've got a 9-inch square here that's going to be my backing. I've got an 8-inch piece of Insulbrite. Insulbrite is an insulated batting that will help protect your hands from the heat. Or if you use them on a table, it'll protect your table. You could use regular batting, but it will not do the same job that Insulbright does, and I highly recommend this. My mom just got some today at Hobby Lobby, 40% off. I believe it's $6.99 a yard, and with 40% off. I don't know if she had a coupon, or I believe it was on sale for 40% off. And so that got it pretty cheap, and you can get a lot of potholders out of a yard. If you divide that by 7 to 8 inches, all of mine are going to be around 8 inches, but a potholder can be anywhere from 7 to 8 inches square. So I recommend you invest in some Insulbright. Then we're going to need 2 coordinating fabrics, and these squares are 4.5 inches square, each of them. And you need 2 of each. Then we're going to, I believe these are, yeah, then we're going to need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 2.5 inch squares that are a lighter color. You want these to be your darker colors and these to be a lighter color. Then we're going to need some binding, and I cut this off of a fat quarter. And I've got 2 strips here that are a little more than 18 inches. So that'd be about 36 inches, about a yard for your binding. And this is 2.5 inches wide. A jelly roll would also work, a strip from there. And if you don't know what a jelly roll is, it is a series of fabrics all in the same fabric line. And they are 2.5 inches wide by the width of the fabric. And there's 40 to 42 in most of them. Some of these have been cut on, so they're not going to be the total width. But they're all together and rolled up into a nice big roll that's about this big around, and they're called a jelly roll. I believe they've got some other names too. I think that's a brand distinction, jelly roll. But all fabric lines have them, and it's a nice way to get a little bit of all fabrics that go together. Okay. The first thing we want to do is take our 8 2.5 inch lighter blocks, and I want to draw a line on the back of these from corner to corner. Now, I used an erasable pen that erases with heat, but it doesn't matter what you use. It won't show. You just don't want anything that'll bleed through. And I recommend that you draw all these lines. A lot of times I like to eyeball it, not draw the lines. But if you want a professional finish, this really helps you with that. Now we're going to take each one of these squares, bigger squares, and we're going to, on opposite corners, so from edge to edge. You do not want it like this so it goes toward, your line goes through the center. You want your line to go from edge to edge, and we're going to stitch right on that line. Now I have a directional print like I'm prone to do, so I want to make sure that I put mine on there the same direction. So I'm going to go ahead and place them. This one is not directional, so it doesn't matter. You just want to make sure your line is edge to edge and you use opposite corners. Now I'm going to take these over to the sewing machine and sew down all those lines, and I'm going to chain them, doing 4 of them at a time, then coming back the other direction. Now I want to cut these apart. And I should have mentioned also, the best way to get all your corners to match, all your seams to come out, and have this perfect looking block when you're done is to be very accurate with your cutting. And I recommend using your ruler as much as possible for your guide rather than your cutting board. So when I want to cut 2.5-inch strips, I use my ruler to measure instead of lining it up on my cutting board. And the reason for that is sometimes cutting boards aren't as accurate, and you just want to use the same method of measurement every time, or you may be a hair off from one to the other. Fortunately, this particular ruler and this cutting board are exactly the same. So I can kind of use them interchangeable, but that's not always the case. Okay, now we know we did it right if we can turn these back and we have a square. I'm going to trim the excess. And in a later video, I'll show you how we could use this excess for something else so we don't waste, but I didn't include that in this one. You see me throwing things under my table all the time. That's where I put my scraps. And I use my scraps, put them in a pillowcase, and when they're about 2/3 full, I sew up the end of it, and they make a great dog bed. Animal shelters love them, so nothing goes to waste. Another thing I didn't tell you is it's a very good idea to starch all your fabric before you start. One of my viewers pointed that out to me a while back, and I appreciate her doing that. I always do that on my quilts, but for some reason, I forget to mention it when doing smaller things. And so I am going to, I did starch my pieces already, but not this one. What I'm using is called Best Press. I love this stuff. I've got the lavender scent. It comes unscented and some other scents, but I'm a lavender freak. So this is the one I get. I order it off of Amazon by the gallon and then put it in a smaller bottle. You can buy smaller bottles, but I use so much of it that it's cheaper for me to do it this way. Now I'm going to let this set just a little bit. It's a good idea to let it's actually a starch alternative, whatever that means. But it's a good idea to let it set a little bit and soak in before you iron it. Okay, I just went and restitched one of my lines. I believe it was this one. No, it's this one I can see. Because it wasn't stitched right on the line. It was slightly off in the middle, and I probably could have got by with it, but I knew I'd be much happier if it looked a little bit closer to perfection when I was done with it. So I went back and restitched it. Don't be afraid to do that because it makes your final product better. And I'm going to be contributing these to my mom's ministry, so I want them to be perfect. Okay, let's iron open all of our blocks. It looks like I'm going to have to get a new ironing board here. Mine's getting kind of stained looking. It's not real pretty in videos, so I'm thinking about getting one of those wool ones. You probably couldn't see this ironing stains on it as much. If you have one and you like it, let me know. Okay, I'm also going to iron this. And I didn't stitch, spray those. I'll go ahead and iron them while they're wet, but it's better to let them soak in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to lay that aside. Now then, I'm going to put these in opposite corners, the same print, so that they form an X in the center. Now I'm going to sew these two together and these two together. I did something wrong here. If I were to sew these together now, I'd have a lot of bulk right there at that seam because I ironed them both the same way. And that's not good. We want them ironed different ways. So let's see if I can figure this out. So now then, when we fold them together, you want this seam right here and this seam here to lay right on top of each other. And you want them to nest together with one of them going this direction, one of them going that direction. And you can feel it and kind of scoot them together till they lock in place. So I'm going to sew that one real quick. Well, we'll here just a minute. I'm going to do the same with this one. See, they're now folded opposite directions. I want to set this right on top of that, this seam on top of that seam, and scoot them till they kind of lock together. And then you also want to see my square is a little crooked. You want to make sure your square is nice and straight. So let's go sew these two together. I got over to the machine and got confused which seams I was sewing, so it's a good idea to always pin it before you take it over to your machine. Now let's look and see. That's a pretty good point there. That's a pretty good one there. Now then, we want to iron one of these this direction. So it's going to my right. This one I'm going to iron to my left, so that we can nest those seams. Okay, so we're going to now match this seam in the middle and hopefully these seams over here too. So we've got two seams, so that's why it's a good idea to make sure you're sewing with a 1/4 inch foot, or I mean that you get a perfect 1/4 inch. That will make all these seams match up. So I've pinned that one. I'm gonna get this one to nesting in there real good and pin it. And the same with this one. Lay on it. Now I'm going to go sew this seam. Now let's see how close I got. The middle looks pretty good. That might be off ever so slightly there. And that one looks pretty good. And these seams here. So let's iron this. And it doesn't matter which way you iron this seam. But since I've starched this irons up so nicely and nice and flat. And since I was careful about which way I ironed my seams, We don't have any unnecessary bulk, and that's the whole purpose of that. Get lots of little threads when fabric ravels here. So I'll cut that one off. Okay, now I want to quilt it. We're going to want to trim this up and make sure it's square, but let's go ahead and center everything. I purposely made the back a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, and then square everything up after I put all the seams in it. I'm going to pin it on all four sides here. And then you can quilt it any way you want. You could put a pretty swirly pattern in it. You could do stripes or anything you wanted to do. I am going to quilt this in the ditch. And quilting in the ditch is stitching right in the seams. And the whole concept of it is to actually get in between the seams so you don't see your stitching. I'm never that perfect. A few of my stitches show, but I try. Another thing when you're quilting is you don't want to start and stop a whole lot, because you end up with cut threads on your back that you just can never get to look continuous. And I also like to back stitch when I start and stop so none of it comes out. And another thing is you don't like to go over the same seam more than once because that can show up on your back too. That's in a perfect world. And I think I can quilt this without doing any of that. I am going to always start on the outside edge. I can sew all the way to this outside edge. Do the same this direction. Then I can come around and do each one of these V's, and I will have started and stopped on an outside edge on all of them, and our binding will cover up those edges. So in this case, it's possible to do. In some real complicated ones, it's not. And so we just do our best. So I'm going to take this to the machine and quilt it on those lines. Now I'm going to take out the pins and give it a really good steam. And we want to square it up to be an 8-inch square. So I'm going to use my table for this, my mat. And I'm going to put this center line on a line. And I'm going to put this center line on a line. And then I'm going to go 4 inches each direction. There's our pot holder. All we have to do now is bind it. So I'm going to take these 2 pieces that I'm going to use for my binding. It's kind of hard to tell which is the right side. And I'm going to put them at a right angle. I'm going to take my pin and my ruler and draw a diagonal line corner to corner. And I'm going to real quickly go stitch this. Now I'm going to trim it to 1/4 inch. Grab my ironing board, my ugly ironing board. And I'm going to press my seam open. Now I'm going to show you a method of how we're going to do the binding and the loop all with the same piece of fabric. If I don't get confused, because sometimes I do. Here's my practice one that I did earlier. And you can see we're going to go all the way around and then make a loop to the back and tuck it in. And I'll show you how we do that. First of all, we iron this into 2 pieces, in half. And I'm also going to show you different ways to do binding. This one that I'm going to show you today is probably the most professional way to do it. It's going to entail hand stitching it on the back, and I'm turning under just a very, very small edge, so I don't want a lot of bulk. And we will be covering this up, but it's just kind of a precaution. And I'm on the right side, starting this upper corner. I'm going to make a 1/4 inch seam down this direction. And for that, I'm going to use my 1/4 inch foot because I find that my binding looks much better if I do. And this is what my 1/4 inch foot looks like. It has a little flange here that when you're sewing, it rides right along the edge. There are some of them that don't have that flange, but I like this kind. So we're going to go all the way to the within a 1/4 inch of the corner. I'm going to stop a 1/4 inch from the end, and I'm going to back stitch off of here. Then I turn this up so that this is a 45-degree angle. And then I turn this back down so this is even with that seam. I start a 1/4 inch in, and I'm going to sew down this edge and stop at a 1/4 inch. I'm going to do that on all of these corners, and we'll do something a little different when we get to the end, and I'll show you that as I'm sewing. Now, before I get to the edge, I want to fold this back and wrap it around to the back side like we're going to do when we finish this. And then I'm going to stitch to the edge. Now I'm going to take the part that's left, fold it in half so I have a crease. And I'm going to cut on the raw edge side here into that crease. Then I'm going to open this up and fold both sides in. And fold it again. And I'm going to stitch that up to where I had put that little slit in. Now we have our loop. We're going to bend this back around, and I'm going to swing this around and tuck it in. Now let's open this up and just press the seam we just made. Turn it all to the back. And I'm going to go around and use my clips, grab a bunch of them. And clip it. And when you get to an end, you want to pull it all the way down like this and then back up, and you'll have a mitered corner. Should come to a point and go across like that. Pull it all the way down, kind of finger press it, then turn it back up. It should meet there, right at the corner. Pull it all the way down, fold it back up till it meets at the corner. And now we've gone all the way around. We want to hand sew it down now with a blind stitch. You could use a ladder stitch too. I just always have strings everywhere. Cut some of those out. Okay, I knotted the string, the thread, and I'm only doing a single thread, not a double thread. And I want to hide my knot from the inside. So you want to go inside and come out so that your knot is in there. Now, a blind stitch, you will, this is just for those who don't know what it is, you go under your background fabric about 1/4 of an inch, but you don't go all the way through to the other side. You come up, and I have too long a thread, but I don't like to change threads, so I hope it doesn't get tangled. Then you just grab a little tiny bite there on the edge, right where you came up. I'm going to reinforce that one because it's my starting seam. Okay. Then you go down again, go about 1/4 of an inch, and I come up at the same time I catch this. Just barely on the edge there. Go down right on the background, right where you came up, and then come up through both the background and the binding, real close to the edge. And I remove these clips before I get to them because they can kind of crinkle things up so it'll lay smoother. Okay, going down through the back about 1/4 of an inch coming up through both the back and the binding, and pull it. And I'm going to do that all the way around. Okay, I finished hand stitching, and I have one I have made before as a sample, and now I have a lovely set of potholders to contribute to my mom's ministry. Thank you for joining me today. If you're new to the channel, I would appreciate it if you would please subscribe so I can bring more videos to you. And if you're a return person, thank you so much for watching and joining me today. And please like and leave a comment if you can. Join me again tomorrow for day 4. For day 2 of the potholder gift and ministry projects. I'm recording a bunch of these at once, so I'm getting confused what day I'm on. Sorry about that. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. Remember, whatever you do, do it to the glory of the Lord. Thank you.